A new university study into loot boxes and in-game purchases has come out with some pretty harsh findings. The researchers from the University of Adelaide talked about predatory monetization in the results of their new study. And their findings could actually have a pretty big impact.
Researchers from the University of Adelaide in Australia have absolutely lambasted practices like loot boxes and certain in-game practices in video games. They were sharing the findings of a study that carried out on microtransactions and loot boxes. The research could have an effect on the results of Australia's current investigation into loot boxes, according to the website Legal Gambling and the Law. Among their assessments, the Adelaide researchers warned that loot boxes pose a significant financial risk for players who are vulnerable to the addictive properties they possess. Here's a statement from Dr. Daniel King, Senior Research Associate at the University of Adelaide School of Psychology. Quote, "These schemes may entice some players to spend more money than they may have intended or can afford, especially when using credit cards or virtual currency that makes it hard to keep track of spending." Another academic involved in the study, Professor Paul Del Fabro, warned that the loot box market is operating without restrictions and regulations, and that with many young players participating in these loot box games, they are especially vulnerable to such schemes as they don't have the self-control required to say no to such predatory practices.
Legal Gambling and the Law says this study may tip Australian lawmakers to follow in the footsteps of the Netherlands, which recently banned loot boxes. The science journal Addiction published an editorial by the Adelaide researchers King and Del Fabro in which they warned games like Fortnite and Hearthstone contribute to increasing similarities between gaming and gambling. Here's a quote from that editorial. "Game monetization schemes have become increasingly sophisticated and have been featured more prominently within popular online games. In our view, some of these schemes could be considered predatory. Predatory monetization schemes typically involve in-game purchasing systems that disguise or withhold the true long-term cost of the activity until players are already financially and psychologically committed." This is big for two reasons. The use of the word predatory. This is a university study and they've flat out said the results show that it's a predatory practice, and you could argue that a lot of the games actually have predatory techniques to get money out of people. And the second thing is the fact that the Australian government are looking into loot boxes just in the same way that the Netherlands has, and France has just kind of come out with their piece on it in Belgium. They've done investigations to see whether or not they need to regulate. Now this university study has come out at such a time where it could have an effect on the Australian government's investigation, and maybe laws could come out down there and change down there that will actually have an effect in the same way that it has in the Netherlands, because Valve won't allow Steam item trading in the Netherlands now, because that is kind of a gateway into the problem. That's like you can turn that little valve, you can turn the valve there. See that? Right, that's good.
There, Mike.
Kind of cut that off at the source in a way, so that's something that they can't have in the Netherlands now because the laws changed there. So there you go, this could have a real impact.
This is the first example I've seen of actual psychologists or people in that specialised field looking at this type of thing in games, and it's what needs to be done, because these are psychological tactics, schemes, strategies to try and get people to part with their money. That's essentially what it is. And these are professionals, these are people who deal with psychology, right? And they're looking into it and saying they are considered predatory. That's strong language, and if they're saying that, you can't ignore it. And in other news, there's no plans for a Rocket League 2, according to developer Psyonix. Rocket League is, of course, the phenomenally successful game about knocking a ball into a goal by driving into it with your little rocket car. Psyonix director Scott Rudy told GameSpot this week that the studio's current focus is not a follow-up, but just to expand on the current game, which launched back in 2015. Quotes, "I don't know what I'd do with Rocket League 2. I'd rather do more to expand the existing Rocket League. It's doing great. There is a lot ahead of it, so yeah, we have no plans for Rocket League 2. Rocket League hits its 3rd anniversary this month and continues to receive regular updates and content drops. The incoming summer update will roll out cross-platform support for all platforms except, you guessed it, PlayStation 4, which can only cross-play with PC. Rudy indicated that this kind of ongoing live support of the existing game is what the studio wants to do, rather than a sequel at this point. Quote, "That's preferable to do. Games as a service. The most valuable thing in our game is our fans. A lot of the stuff we do is focused on keeping them with us, keeping them interested and all hyped up about our game. We want to provide a really good experience for the players to have fun with for years to come. We want to keep this going.
Bit of a no-brainer, I think. Why would you? You've already got loads of people playing Rocket League. People still talk about it. A lot of casual gamers really enjoy it. People you speak to who aren't really, well, anecdotally, people I speak to who are not really gamers, they know Rocket League and they love it. And for me, it's up there with the likes of Fortnite and stuff for games that people just enjoy because it's very fun. It's really well designed. Why change it? And they can keep updating and adding to it. It was given away for free to a lot of people on the PlayStation, and the model for that game is a service model at this point, so they don't need a Rocket League 2. And I agree. I'm completely with them there. What would they even do with it?
I mean, it's interesting that their service model, their business model involves loot boxes, which kind of links to our first.
That's right.
Bit of news item too. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, obviously they hide from all the criticism with regards to loot boxes to Psyonix.
They just don't get it. I don't think they get that kind of criticism.
They don't. But that's a notable thing for me. But they're doing well. Why would they want to change it? People. But it is mainly cosmetics. That needs to point out. It is mainly cosmetics. It's not pay to win and that kind of shit. But it's still loot boxes. Still potentially predatory.
You can do it in a way that's not in your face and that doesn't upset loads of people. And for some reason, it's in Rocket League, it's in Overwatch, it's in FIFA Ultimate Team, and the vast majority of people who are engaged in it are fine with it.
We're not condoning it, we're just pointing that out.
Observation. Elsewhere in the news, speaking at the White Knights St. Petersburg conference last week, Valve revealed some big data on the Steam PC platform. Perhaps the most eye-catching piece of data was that there had been a 160% year-over-year rise in monthly active users of VR on Steam. The company called VR on Steam a thriving marketplace with ongoing investment. We also learned that Steam as a whole has 43 million daily active users, up from 25 million for the same period in 2016. There's also the reveal that there's an average of 180 games being released on the platform every single week. So they are big numbers. I mean, every single one of them is worthy of its own story, if you ask me. 160% increase in VR. That's enormous and a big surprise, to be honest. I thought, if anything, it would be a plateau or a steady increase. Right. The fact that it's 160% year over year, that is some real success there. 43 million active daily users. That is enormous. That is unbelievably huge. And the big one, 180 games a week, man. That's too many games.
It's like 25 a day, or just a bit more than 25 a day. Every single day on Steam. How do you filter through that?
Imagine it was one a day. I mean, that's still quite a lot of games.
That is a lot of games.
180 games a week. How much is Steam Direct as well? It's like $100 to get your game on there. So they're making... What, 1,800? Oh, I don't do
a lot of money.
18,000.
That is a load of money.
Yeah, that's embarrassing head maths there for me.
Next up, Amy Hennig, the creator of Uncharted, said developer unions aren't the solution to solving the games industry crunch problem. But she said outsourcing development to contractors might lead to unions in future. Speaking to GamesIndustry.biz at the Game Lab conference last week, Hennig said unionizing wouldn't protect developers from crunch and it would be up to management to solve the problem. Quote, I don't think unionizing is actually the answer because most people do it out of a passion for what they're doing. They need to be protected by the people that are running the studios and the projects to make sure that crunch is discouraged. Hennig believes the industry's increasing reliance on outsourced contractors will lead to developers and publishers instigating structural changes which might lead to unionization. Hennig said, quote, being able to do remote work has made it possible, and I think all of those things are going to motivate big structural changes that then may require some sort of unionization, because then we're going to be independent contractors without health insurance or any sort of safety net.
So this might not mean much to a lot of people watching, but the games industry crunch is a big problem, and the solution that Amy Hennig says is not to have unions, because unions is kind of the way to improve working conditions, I guess, or if you want more pay and all that kind of thing.
Better working conditions.
Whatever your agreement says, you're joining a union and then using the power of the union and all them other workers to fight your corner for you. But as she really astutely points out, is the fact that a lot of the developers are just, the reason they do crunch in the first place is because they love the game that they're working on. They're really passionate about it. They've put their own art and creativity into it, and they really care about it succeeding. That's the kind of thing that you've got to try and protect, which is difficult and makes it a lot more complicated.
Yeah, what she doesn't represent there is the people who feel otherwise, and that's the problem for me. She is a boss, right? And that's exactly.
That's true.
You know, the unions are there for the workers, not the bosses.
The boss is going.
The boss goes, "Oh, you don't need unions
are
because we do it for the passion." Well, maybe she does. She's in an independent studio now. She's not in the big studio anymore. Maybe that people around her are like that, but there are people out there who are maybe getting exploited by being forced to work long hours because without pay, without the proper working conditions. You know, we've covered it on our channel where we've covered developers horrible stories from being made to work under those conditions. Now, those are the people that need support, and not the people that are passionate. I mean, I don't know what the answer is. I'm just saying that I don't think she sees the whole story.
Whatever it is, it's probably case by case as well. It's like maybe a union would be just a trick in one corporation, but it might be not exactly what another corporation needs, because the way that crunch plays out in different places is completely different as well. So that's another study from another group of people that says that loot boxes are predatory. They're bad. They're bad things. Do you agree with that? Or maybe you play Rocket League and you don't agree at all? Let me know down in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe. If you enjoyed the video, there should be another video right there if you want to watch that, and a link to Patreon if you want to support the channel. Thank you for watching. See you next time.